Welcome to the January 16th, 2014 Downtown Design Review meeting. I have a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. Please turn off your cell phones or turn your sound off on your cell phones. Also, committee, please attach your mics and turn them on when you speak. Anyone speaking from the public will need to come to the mic. We need to have a recording of what you say, so you'll need to come to the podium and speak in the mic. We'll also need you to sign the paper in front of you. And also, this is obviously going to have a lot of people that will want to speak at this meeting. The presenters will have a certain amount of time to present, but anyone commenting on this, I'd like the comments to be kept brief if possible. Please don't repeat a lot of what has been said before. If you concur with something that has been said before, please just say you concur, but don't go into elaboration. And respect everyone's time. We need to call roll.
Betsy Brunstetter.
Present.
Gigi Faulkner.
Present.
Charles Ainsworth.
Present.
Ike Aikenwande.
Present.
Connie Scothorn.
Present.
Richard Tannenbaum.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Okay, and I am assuming that everyone has had a chance to read the minutes. Do I have a motion on the minutes?
Move to approve.
That's Tannenbaum, Aikenwande. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. There is one case that has been withdrawn. There are no continuance requests. There are no items on the consent docket. And we're going into the cases for individual consideration, and I will recuse myself for this first case. Gigi?
Thank you. We'll get started. First, we will have the applicant come up to the podium. If you would, please tell us who you are and make your presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant. I have several people with me here today that I'd like to introduce. I have Brad Ezel with Leidos. Leidos is formerly Benham. This group will know things they've worked on, such as the Chesapeake Arena and the Will Rogers Terminal. Also here is Nancy Anthony, president of the Oklahoma City Community Foundation, and she will be able to speak to facts and circumstances relating to the RFP that was previously issued on this site. Mr. Paul Renfro, vice president of OG&E, is with us. Mr. Brian Alford, managing director of public affairs at OG&E. Mr. Bill Bullard, general counsel of OG&E. Mr. Scott Dedman, who's an architect at ADG. And finally, Mr. Peter DeLisi, Executive Director of the Arts Council. He will be here to address this committee on issues surrounding the Arts Council's operation of the building. So why we are here today is because we have a unique opportunity. The city has a unique opportunity to see this site at 400 West Sheridan redeveloped for a corporate headquarters. Now, the procedural function as to why we're here is for a demolition permit. We're requesting this committee grant us a certificate of approval to demolish the structure at 400 West Sheridan, and in addition, the accessory structures. Now, what we have at 400 West Sheridan is a unique building, but it's a unique building that over the last few years has fallen into disrepair. It's in a state of ongoing decay, it is uninhabitable, and it has become a big problem and a blight on downtown. This building, as it currently sits, is arresting development in this part of downtown. It's arresting development on what we think is a key piece of property in downtown Oklahoma City. And we think that the CA before this committee will allow not just a great opportunity, but a unique opportunity. It's not every day and it's not every year that this city and this committee gets an opportunity to vote on a case that will allow a corporate headquarters to relocate in an area that is thriving. We feel that what is before this committee is something that is appropriate. we think it is the most reasonable request that could be made on this piece of property. But I think it's important to walk this committee through what's transpired over years, to understand that it's not this applicant that's coming before the committee seeking to tear down a building for the sake of tearing down a building. What you will see through the course of years and studies is that this building, through events completely unrelated to my client, has become in a state of disrepair, has become in a state of ongoing decay, and has become a blight. Now, what you have before you is a packet, and throughout my presentation I'm going to refer to various things, and it's tabbed for your convenience. So I think it's important to start with a study in 2003 that you will find at tab 8 in your packet. The 2003 Schuler and Shook study was done in cooperation with Web Management Services. And the purpose of this study was to evaluate the condition of the physical plan of Stage Center, to develop a menu of renovation options, and develop associated preliminary cost options for possible renovations. Now, this study was commenced by the Arts Council of Oklahoma City. And the conclusion that this study came to was, in 2003, they estimated to bring the building just up to the ability to make it functional, you were looking at $5 to $7 million. But the problem with the $5 to $7 million is that didn't put the building into a position of being functional, because the survey they conducted found that the users for these types of small performing arts centers required certain amenities that Stage Center lacked. So the $5 to $7 million wouldn't put the building in a position that could even be functional. They estimated in 2003 dollars that it would require $11 to $18 million to turn the building around and to construct the necessary support facilities. As we move forward to 2010, there was a significant rain event in this city. That significant rain event had a major impact on this facility. It flooded. And what happened when it flooded is it wreaked havoc on the electrical system, the mechanical systems, and created a situation in which mold began to grow and thrive. Seeing that the opportunities for the building were becoming diminished, in 2011, a study was conducted by Webb. And if you'll turn to tab 9, you will see the Webb study. It's important to understand who Webb is. Webb is North America's leading provider of development, planning, and consulting services for arts and creative entities. I think that is critical to understanding this report. This is a group that seeks to find solutions for these types of buildings. They don't seek to find reasons to demolish. They want to keep these types of buildings. This study they were hired by the Cultural Development Corporation of Oklahoma City in cooperation with Allied Arts. Now, their task was to consider the feasibility of renovating and reanimating Stage Center. So the process they went through was thorough, and it's important that I read what they did. What they did was interview more than 70 community leaders. They tested demand and evaluated current supply of other cultural facilities. They analyzed market data and researched comparable facilities and projects in other parts of the country. So as you can see, this wasn't a study that was predetermined. They took a lot of time and effort to come up with what they could find to reimagine and reanimate this building. But notably, if you go to page 23, you'll find the conclusions of this study. And what they found was a need does exist for this type of facility. But similar to the 2003 study, what it found is this center does not have adequate support facilities that the types of groups that operate this type of facility not only need but demand. And so I quote, "We are fundamentally, we are not optimistic about the idea of renovating Stage Center as a multi-user arts center. This is due in part to what they deemed a technical unsuitability of the building. None of the spaces in Stage Center in its current configuration with its existing amenities meet the needs of these groups." So what this study did was come to a conclusion, and it was two-part. They recommended, one, put the building out for a public RFP. See what responses you get. Once the RFP process is done, evaluate the responses, and if no viable candidates emerge from the RFP process, then the appropriate thing to do is to put the building for sale and allow the market to dictate what the appropriate use is for this site. So as we fast forward, in 2012, the RFP was produced. You can find that on tab 10 in your book. The RFP sought rehabilitation as a theater or other economically viable use or mix of uses. So it was a fairly broad RFP. It was seeking anything to tell us how we can make this facility work and function. The RFP only had 2 responses. One was for a children's museum, one was for an architectural museum. And notably, neither of the responses lacked viable funding. So, with that in mind, based on the 2011 study and based on the lack of viable candidates from the RFP, they did what they had to do, and that is put the building up for sale, allow the market to dictate what the appropriate use for this site is. Then we fast forward to July 22nd, 2013. The applicant bought the property. After purchasing the property, he then commissioned a study. You can find that study at tab 11 in your binder. This is the Leidos study.
David, who is maintaining the facility? Who is paying for the maintenance of the facility during this period of time?
It changed. As of now, the applicant owns it. There was a time in
Prior to that?
Prior to that, the city owned it, I believe, until 2011, and then it reverted back to the Kirkpatrick Foundation. When we look at the Leidos study, what it says is, at this point, based on the damage over years of problems and now with the flooding, we are looking at in excess of $10 million just to turn the building on. Now, that doesn't address the functionality of the building. So $10 million just to rehab the building to be able to open your doors. And then we have to go back to what the previous study said. In 2003 dollars, we were looking at somewhere between 11 and 18 million. So now we're looking at somewhere around 30 million to make this building functional and open the door. And that fails to address what it would cost on an ongoing basis for operations. And it fails to address the fact that we don't have a user for the building, we don't have a mix of uses for the building, and we don't have an ability to repurpose the building. We respectfully ask this committee for approval of our CA. We think that based on not just our desire to repurpose this building, but years and years of studies and attempts to make this building work, that the request before you today is not only the most appropriate course of action on this site, but it's a course of action that will continue the development of downtown. It will allow a key piece of property in the downtown area to be repurposed with an amazing opportunity. It is not every day that a great corporate citizen comes before any body with a proposal to relocate their corporate headquarters. And that's what this committee has before it today. I do think it's important that we show you what our vision for this site is, and that vision is found within your tabs. It's going to be within your report, but Mr. Dedman with ADG is going to get up and go through the renderings. If there's no questions of me at this point, I will turn the podium over to Mr. Dedman.
Does the committee have any questions? At this point, we're ready to move on. Thank you.
Good morning. Scott Dedman with ADG, 116 East Sheridan, Oklahoma City. Our firm was asked to explore what the development possibilities would be on this site, really based on the user's needs and the user's programs and how that would develop into the site. And so that's what we have done. Some of the sort of planning considerations and recommendations we've made, things that we've felt are important, would be to be able to create a building that creates street walls and encourages active sidewalks, creates and really protected human-scale pedestrian areas around the building so that it really promotes some public interaction into the building, provides spaces at the ground level for uses of retail, commercial, restaurant-type spaces. And again, that just continues to promote the public interaction. One of the things that's particularly important on this site is that we want to be able to provide enough parking on this site. We know that downtown parking is a big issue right now, so we want to provide enough parking on this site to accommodate the users and the tenants of this building. And so minimizing the impact of that parking structure is an important planning issue that we have to look at. And then really developing an overall composition of the development and how that relates to the adjacent blocks and the adjacent neighbors is an important thing that we wanted to look at. There are some traditional uses in this area, the Arts Festival being one, and so paying respect to the Festival Plaza is very important, and how we can help to do that. And then also the Myriad Gardens is a great amenity to Oklahoma City, and how can we strengthen that tie and that relationship to Myriad Gardens. So up on the screen are some of our drawings and sketches. And again, these are not a final design. These are a planning study, a master plan study for this site. The images that you will see are images that really relate more to the massing in relationship to the program elements as opposed to an actual design. So please keep that in mind as we go through these. So the plan that you see on your screen right now is the ground floor plan, and I think that is really one of the key areas in how that relates to the city and to the street. Again, one of the things that we felt was important was to create street walls around the entire complex. Great. Thank you, Scotty. So that we've brought the building to the property line along Sheridan, and this is proposed to be possibly a future development in this area of the hotel office residential tower. Again, with some opportunities for restaurant space, possibly opportunities for a coffee shop, something that would relate to a hotel lobby that would open to the street. Again, the street wall would continue in this area with the office floor above extending to the property line, and then actually recessing the first floor a little bit so that we have some protected pedestrian space, and really brings that pedestrian space down to a human scale and connects that. The other things that we felt were important were creating some active outdoor spaces, some openings. And so slightly recessing the lobby and creating an outdoor plaza that could provide some outdoor dining space at that corner. This is a very important corner, being across from the gardens, being across from Devon, and any other future development that happens in downtown. This is, we feel like this is a very key corner. Of course, this is the Hudson and Sheridan corner. And then as we move around, the relationship to Myriad Gardens, we think that needs to be enhanced and strengthened as a part of this. Again, the building is somewhat set back from that corner so that it opens up this area and really welcomes people to the Festival Plaza. Again, there would be a second lobby, possibly for additional tenants in the building. Possible location for some office space that would open off of Festival Plaza. We see some uses for that. We're also looking at the possibility of providing space for a daycare. We think this would be a unique location for daycare, being directly across from John Rex School. So we think that would be a very nice amenity to have for the city. The other thing that happens is the building would actually extend to this dashed line that we see, and we'd be able to recess a protected play area for the kids and to be able to secure that. Part of the development would also be to build a permanent stage as a part of Festival Plaza, and so that's what we see right here. We've incorporated that into the service access for the building in this sketch. Again, this is not the final design, but this is one possible strategy that could take place where we could berm up and create a down ramp that would be the backdrop for the stage in this area. One of the key things along Walker Avenue is we've tried to keep the exposure of the parking garage to a minimum, really anchoring the corners with the daycare and with the possibility of a retail, restaurant, cafe type space on the corners so that we have a limited amount of exposure of the parking garage. Let me see. One thing I did want to mention, our property line is actually right down the center of Festival Plaza. And as you can see, we've set quite a ways back. Actually, the line of the building is in the current line of kind of the edge of Festival Plaza before it goes onto the site. So it basically aligns with the original property line where the street right-of-way was. Again, I think the importance of this first floor is really looking at ways that we can create this interaction with the public and with the pedestrians, and that's will be an important factor. Then at the fourth level, arrange things. At the fourth level, we are suggesting that that the parking area be capped with a green roof. The green roof does several things. It provides some nice amenity space for future tenants, for the primary tenant that would be going in the tower. The conference center would be located at this level as well, so the green roof really creates a nice amenity space for this conference center area. The other thing that the green roof does is it really hides and screens the parking from above, so that as the buildings are looking down, not only this building but other buildings in downtown, as they look down, they don't just see another sea of parking, another sea of cars outside of this space. The other thing I'll point out, too, is not only is there a green roof over the parking, but there's a green roof over the podium area. That'll become a little clearer when you see the renderings. But that provides some breakout space for the conference center area so that there is actually an outdoor roof space that could be used by locating the conference center on that level. The next image is a cross-section. This is a section that's looking north, and so you can see the cut through the parking garage. What we're proposing is that 2 levels of parking be located below grade. The site is already excavated quite a ways, and so there'd be some some benefit to that excavation to be able to go ahead and bring 2 levels of parking below grade. That would leave us 4 levels above grade, and we feel like we can get enough parking in that location to serve the building and the future tenants of that space. Then again, of course, on top of the parking is the green roof. As we look along Hudson Avenue, we would actually have 2 levels of parking below the main tower. At the ground level would be the lobby, restaurants, retail, commercial space. We'd propose a higher floor-to-floor height in that area so that we would have some nice space for retail and commercial uses. Above that would be 2 levels of offices, and then again the conference center would sit at the green roof level. And then the main tower would sit above the conference center. And so again, these are images. We're looking primarily at massing here and how the pieces fit on the site. We feel the main tower would need to address the park, and also really the massing of downtown starts in the core, of course around Devon Tower now, and scales down as we get back. And of course this is the John Rex Elementary School now, and so we want to respect the height of that and not overwhelm that project. This is a nice view of the potential green roof and the way that could look. Also the development of Festival Plaza and how that could become a very active space from a day-to-day standpoint, because we would have a tremendous amount of people using this building and being able to utilize that outdoor space again. And being able to link that with Myriad Gardens, I think, would be a very important thing to do. Another view, this is looking really from Myriad Gardens basically back toward the tower, a little bit of an aerial view. It shows well sort of how we've set the building back to create some outdoor plaza space at the entries to the building, possibly a video screen or some type of active element might take place there that could be used for the Dead Center Film Festival or just things that promote Oklahoma City in that area. Again, this is the potential office space in this location could as easily or just as well be a restaurant possibly that opens onto Festival Plaza that would bring people into that area. The sort of the recess for the outdoor play area for the daycare is shown in that as well. And again, this just gives you a good idea of the massing of the tower and also the level of the conference center. And now you can really get a view of the roof deck off of the conference center. Again, just looking down at the building, again, you see the roof deck, the future development in this area. Again, we've said that that's somewhere between an 8 and 12-story structure. I think we've got it shown at approximately 10 right now, just to give you an idea of the scale and the massing. And then this would be a view from the corner of Sheridan and Hudson, looking from the Devon headquarters corner, looking back, just to give you an idea of the massing and the height and the way it relates to the street. This was what I was talking about as far as providing some protected pedestrian space by pushing that front back a little bit. We have a more human scale at the retail, restaurant, commercial area, and create walkways that could be very, very pleasant to use. And that is the sort of the study that we've done. I think it has some really great possibilities. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Dedman?
Yeah, Scott, are you actually going to reconstruct the Festival Plaza all the way, or just?
Well, certainly a portion of it is going to be disrupted because let me see if I can go back here. The property line is right in the center, and of course we're proposing that be used for an underground ramp that would lead to the service area for the building. So a good portion of the Festival Plaza will have to be renovated. To what extent the rest of it would have to be repaired and renovated, I think that's yet to be determined. But certainly there will be some construction that takes place there.
I think it's important now that you've seen the opportunity for this site. If you'll turn to tab 6 in your handout, these are a list of items that the applicant is committed to, and that when a building permit is filed, these are the standards that will have to apply. 1, a 14 to 16-story office tower along Hudson Avenue, which will include the headquarters of OGE Energy Corporation. 2, the site for an 8 to 12-story tower along Sheridan Avenue to be made available for hotel, residential, and/or office development to be offered for sale and developments by others. 3, integrated multi-level parking. Number 4, lease space for retail, restaurants, and other uses benefiting downtown. 5, an exhibit commemorating the architectural significance of Stage Center. And 6, areas and improvements accommodating the Spring Festival of the Arts sponsored by the Arts Council of Oklahoma City. And with that, I would ask Mr. DeLisi to come up and address this committee.
My name is Peter DeLisi, 400 West California Street. I'm the Executive Director of the Arts Council of Oklahoma City, and a past user of the building. First, I want to mention that the building was never owned by the city of Oklahoma City. It was owned by the Kirkpatrick Affiliated Fund under the Community Foundation. They offered us the opportunity several years ago to use the building, so we became the owner of the building for a while, but they still retained ownership of the land. And we were able to be the owners of the building as long as we used the building for arts-related purposes. And of course, when we had the flood, there was nothing we could do at that point. And so we turned the building back over to the Kirkpatrick Affiliated Fund. As a user of the building, Stage Center was problematic. That's really an understatement. From day one, the costs associated with that building almost buried every other user that had used the building going all the way back to the Mummers Theater when it first opened in the late 60s, early 70s. We felt like it was incumbent upon us to try to make a run with this building, to try to do our best to, because of its significance as an arts facility. And it was just always very, very difficult. You couldn't plan for anything. For instance, if a chiller were to go out in that building, the cost of it would be $100,000. And you wouldn't know when something like that was going to happen. So you couldn't budget for it. You just really had a hard time budgeting for things that had to do with the upkeep of the building. Just the general maintenance of it, it was just a terrible headache. It's been vacant now for several years, and of course, as Mr. Box has pointed out, it has really become a blight in the area. It's also, I think, kind of dangerous. People sleeping on the deck, and it's just an unfortunate that it's gone downhill so much. But everything that could possibly be done to try to figure out how to make this building work, believe me, has been done. Many of us have worked on all those studies that were discussed, not just the Arts Council of Oklahoma City, but several other arts-related organizations that were involved with Allied Arts Study. Painstakingly went through every aspect of how that building could be utilized, and it's just very unfortunate, but it really doesn't work. And so I'm just telling you that we were able to take the funds that we the considerable funds that we were putting into that building, and refocus those monies to projects that are going on now that are just really meeting the needs of a lot of different artists and performers in Oklahoma City. You can imagine what you can do with $100,000 when you're a nonprofit agency and you're trying to squeak every penny out of those hard-earned dollars that people are giving to us. And we feel like that's the best thing for us to be doing at this point. We'd love for you to go and visit our website and see some of the wonderful projects that we do. Our mission is to bring the arts and the community together, and we try to do that every single day of the week with the projects that we put on. And we love what we do, and we really love being a part of downtown Oklahoma City. I would say the idea of having something go on to this property, someone to come in and spend the kind of dollars and effort that Mr. Williams and his crew are putting together is very exciting to me. It'll be really nice if something like that could happen there, just the prospects of getting this property up to speed. Thank you.
You did a great job.
Peter, when was the last event there? If you
The
can
last
recall?
event?
Yeah.
Well, I would say it would be it was the Arts Festival here right before the flood. The flood happened in like June.
Theater-wise, when you had a production.
Oh, well, Carpenter Square Theater was one of the tenants of that building. And then, of course, now remember when the flood occurred, I think at the time there were 4 people that were using the facility, including Oklahoma Shakespeare in the Park and Carpenter Square Theater. Well, unfortunately for Oklahoma Shakespeare in the Park, their offices were in the basement of the building. The basement of the building was completely and totally flooded. And then, of course, the sub-basement, as Mr. Box alluded to, is where all the electrical and things were. And that was a room that was even lower than the basement, which was completely underwater. So Shakespeare in the Park lost literally everything. They had, perma boxes full of their records for years that were just underwater and lost. Carpenter Square Theater had all of their staging equipment and costumes for every production that they'd ever put on in the history of the organization were down in that basement, and they lost almost all of that. So it was a tragic loss to the community when that happened.
All those events were they ever profitable, or everything had to be subsidized?
Everything had to be subsidized.
From day one?
At one point, we were subsidizing for a Carpenter Square Theater performance, or for any theater performance, per seat, $8 per seat per performance. if that gives you any idea. They had a full season. It was dramatic. I believe at one point was the Civic Center numbers, I think subsidies were more in the neighborhood of $2 per seat per performance. So it was just outrageous in that regard. I'm sorry? No, and it was never perfect, in my opinion. I mean, from an environmental standpoint, it was built back in a time when they really didn't think about eco-friendly building practices. There's large single-pane windows that, if it's hot outside, it's hot inside. If it's cold outside, it's a meat locker inside. In some parts of the building, there's a litany of reasons why it was difficult that I could go into if you want to have lunch sometime. All right. Any other questions for me? Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
That leads us to where we are and where we are now on this property. And the way we see it is that we are now at a crossroads in this city for this piece of property. We have a structure that has, by all accounts, had every effort made by a litany of groups to try to make this work, and it just doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, it becomes a major problem and a blight on downtown. And what that is doing is frustrating future development, but it's frustrating a unique and rare future development, an opportunity that doesn't present itself often. We believe that the CA before this committee that we're seeking approval for is the most appropriate course of action, it's the most reasonable course of action, and it's the only way to ensure that this future development and this opportunity is seized. We respectfully ask this committee to grant approval of our CA. I'm here to answer any questions.
John.
You guys made a great presentation. Tell me about the timeline on this project, from demo to construction start to finish. Kind of, how do you see that happening?
Rainey Williams, 5400 North Grand Boulevard. The timeline, of course, we've talked about. We have a massing study. We've not done final design work, obviously, for a building of this magnitude. We're looking at somewhere between $2 and $4 million to do final design work. So we're not doing that yet, obviously, pending approval of our plans. If we're granted that approval, then it will take probably, we estimate, a year, maybe 18 months to do studies for OG&E's needs, do final drawings, and during that process we'll embark on demolition and obviously getting approval from this board. But we're thinking that it could be in the mid-2015 range to start construction, and a 18 to 24 month construction period thereafter.
Okay. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you very much. Is that the conclusion of your presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay. Pardon me. Would you like to give us your staff response, please?
Yes, I can, or unless you want to ask the audience first, it's up to you.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, would you please?
We have not had an application for this new building, so we have not considered it. A lot of the information that you're hearing today is new to us also. So we don't have an application for this proposal, and our ordinance asks that we judge whether or not a building should be demolished based on its historic relevance. This building is unique. It is historic to the history of Oklahoma City. It's designed by a notable architect. It has been recognized nationwide, statewide, and it forms part of the history of Oklahoma City. And based on those criteria from our guidelines, staff recommends denial of this proposal for demolition of this building.
Thank you.
Madam Chairperson, if I may, I think it's important I address a point real quick. What the committee saw from us in the packet is exactly what we filed with planning staff on December 17th. So they have had an opportunity to see everything that this committee saw.
Scotty, is it on the historic register?
It is eligible to be listed on the historic register. It has not been so listed because the owner declined to allow that.
But it's not on the historic register?
No. It has been deemed eligible by the Historic Society. No.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any other questions of Scotty? Okay. Just for the record, I do want you all to know, and want the audience here to know, that in our packets, thank you, Mr. Box, for the binder very neatly put together that you gave us, but in our packets, we did have your application. We did have all this information, including the Leidos study, the Schuler and Shook study, the Webb study, the inspection reports, and also the RFPs that were put out. And so we did have all of this documentation to look at before we gathered here today. So many pages, many pages. So we're going to move forward, and we do have several people here, I think, that would like to speak about this project. If there are representatives of any groups that are here, if you would like to come first to the podium, announce your name, please sign in and speak. If you can keep your comments to just a few minutes, we would really appreciate that, so that everyone that's here has a chance to comment. And we also have received all the comments from the public that have been presented to the staff, and we've had those to review as well. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Barrett Williamson. I'm currently the president of Preservation Oklahoma Incorporated, a statewide preservation organization. I also serve as an advisor for the state of Oklahoma to the National Trust for Historic Places. Today marks a solemn occasion. This is about the future of historic preservation in Oklahoma City. You will be deciding the fate of one of the 20th century's most important and significant buildings today. This application is to demolish a structure. That is all. You've heard the saying, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. Well, this pig has a ton of lipstick on it. Is the building important? The building is so important that architectural historians and writers have been discussing it since it was built over 40 years ago. Names like Kevin Roche, Frank Gehry, and others have cited its influence on modern architectural thought. Is this building important? The Oklahoma City Historic Preservation Commission thinks so. The National Trust for Historic Places thinks so. Statewide organizations think so, including the American Institute of Architects, local chapter, the Tulsa Foundation for Architecture, the Oklahoma City Foundation for Architecture, and many others. Next slide, please. Okay. So, your decision today requires you to follow a fairly simple set of guidelines. And again, I'd like to say, this is excerpted here on the screen, that the decisions will be based on the guidelines and regulations of the Downtown Design District Ordinance. Also excerpted is the Downtown Design Review Committee staff shall apply these guidelines, which I believe that they have done correctly, and that it's very important in following these guidelines to preserve our historic character-defining features that make Oklahoma City unique and not generica. So, this is a summary of the organizations that think that this is important, and there's some others that I believe that I haven't even mentioned. There's a School of Design, many others, but in bringing these groups to the forefront, It is a rare day when preservationists and architects agree on anything. So we are all unanimous in our agreement that the Stage Center is an important building. We put out a petition on change.org, which I believe you have a copy of, that was on the due date of the delivery. December 18th, we put this petition up. As of this morning, we were 40 signatures shy of 1,000. We've had people sign this from 35 states and 8 countries. The majority of the signatures are Oklahomans. The ordinance does not speak in any way to economic feasibility. More lipstick. Many of our preservation and civic success stories have come to be because of a little patience. Here are 3 of them. They all sat vacant for much longer than the 3 to 4 years that Stage Center has been vacant. And they're all wonderful success stories. In addition, through visionary leadership and the MAPS projects that have come to pass, preservation has been a very important key in the development of Bricktown, all the tax credit work that was done on the canal side of buildings. So if it weren't for preservation and this visionary leadership, we wouldn't have Bricktown. We wouldn't have a rehabilitated Civic Center Music Hall. We wouldn't have a number of other buildings. Oklahoma City is not starved for available land for development. There's so much land available, it's almost a joke. And I'd like to quote a blogger who posted something on the OKC Talk website this last week, and I quote, "It's ridiculous how everyone is obsessing over the need to redevelop this it's ridiculous how everyone is obsessed over the need to redevelop or empty this space right the hell now. Like it is somehow holding back progress in downtown. When smoking holes, parking lots, and other available development sites litter all of downtown. If that building stood as is, it would be another decade at least before we ran out of other options for office development in the Central Business District. Oh, and then you have the Court of Shoreland, acres and acres of it to consider. A shortage of development options is the opposite of Oklahoma City's problem right now," end quote. Here's another aspect of the ordinance to consider. In the ordinance, it says that historic circulation patterns will be preserved. Demolition of Stage Center will disrupt the pattern that has been established over the years with the Festival of the Arts. Here's a graphic from 2008 when the Court of Shore was beginning and the study that TAP Architecture and their consultants produced leading up to today's efforts. You might notice in that there is no suggestion that Stage Center, which is located right here, be removed. Is there any chance that the new John Rex Elementary School was cited because of its proximity to Stage Center and the Myriad Gardens? It makes a pretty compelling link. You only have one chance to get this right, and there's no guarantees. You're going to have a chance to review the excellent work of ADG and Kestrel, Mr. Williams, coming up in the future under a separate application for certificate of appropriateness. Now is not the time to review that. More lipstick. To reiterate what it states in the ordinance, is that you're reviewing this for demolition, and demolition of historically, internationally acclaimed properties is not to be considered. So, I would like to urge you to follow the ordinance, apply the guidelines and regulations as they are written. Don't anticipate future Board of Adjustment action. I think that's out of DDRC's purview. Deal with the fact at hand and deny the applicant. Your package should have been about 1/4 of an inch thick, and that's the thickness of the National Register nomination, which is being held by the keeper of the register. Mr. Williams, if he so chose, could call up the keeper of the register and say, I want the building listed. It would be listed within 24 hours. I mean, it's a slam dunk. There's no dispute. The rest of the material, in my opinion, is just lipstick. As a middle ground, which I do not personally believe in, but I think it's worth saying, if you so choose to, in my opinion, exceed your authority and grant this application, I would urge you to make it contingent upon proof of financing and an approved building permit, so that due to economic factors beyond anybody's control, that we don't end up with a vacant, raw piece of land sitting next to the Devon Center and Myriad Gardens for the next 3 to 5 years. And in doing that, we would still lose an irreplaceable piece of our history. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. And for your information, we also did have included in our packet all the historic register documents and reviewed those.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello.
Please state your name. Hi.
I'm Bob Ross. I'm wearing 2 hats today. I'm the CEO of Inasmuch Foundation, and I'm also on the board of directors on the John Rex Elementary. Inasmuch is at 210 Park Avenue, and Rex Elementary is 500 West Sheridan. Inasmuch Foundation and Ethics and Excellence in Journalism Foundation, the 2 foundations we run that were started by Edith Kinney Gaylord, are the largest private foundations in Oklahoma City. And I thought it was important to note that we are extremely committed to historic preservation of the foundations. In fact, we've provided in excess of $10 million over the past 10 years to various projects in our community, including the renaissance of 16th Street, where the Lyric Theater is located, OCU Law School, the Heritage Center, the History Center. We've provided grants to the Bonwin Memorial. In fact, just gave a large $3.5 million grant for the memorial's expansion. John Rex Elementary is going to open this August. We're very excited. And as you all know, it's right next door to the Stage Center and the planned OG&E headquarters. The school is being built for 500 students, pre-K through 5th grade. And we're going to start pre-K, K1 and 2, and then grow a grade a year from there. Inasmuch Foundation has provided the startup funds for the school, totaling $1 million, and the building is the last structure being built for Maps for Kids, and so it's a very exciting project for downtown. I would like to address some concerns as a neighbor and as a board member of the Rex Elementary. We have, I want to note our safety concerns for the current structure at Stage Center. I personally have walked around, driven around the facility, and noted just 2 weeks ago there is a small homeless camp in various parts of Stage Center. Down the ramp that flooded through the garage door, there are several. There's evidence of people living down there. There's also evidence of people living in various kind of nooks and crannies of the building. I noted in Steve Lackmeyer's piece in the Oklahoman 2 days ago, his listing of the various crime and safety statistics. In 2010, a dead body was removed from the site. He noted burglaries, thefts, disturbances, mental health calls. This is not something we want next door to our John Rex Elementary. These safety concerns are real, and they are a major cause of concern for us. I also want to step back and just reflect on the history for the past 3 or 4 years. The Oklahoma City Community Foundation requested proposals for this site. In fact, at Inasmuch Foundation, I fielded phone calls and emails. There was not a not-for-profit theater group, in my understanding, that came forward that exists that can afford to renovate and maintain this building. The only other idea I heard was a children's museum. And there is no startup nonprofit that could afford this liability, both to buy the property, renovate it, and maintain it. And Inasmuch Foundation, this is something that we would not be able to fund if requested. We are thrilled with the notion that OG&E would build its headquarters right next to our John Rex Elementary. Obviously, OG&E is one of the finest companies in the state and indeed the country. Its company is committed to Oklahoma City. Its employees are committed to the city and downtown. We're excited at the Rex Elementary for the possibility of volunteers, mentors, and a real exciting partnership. When you boil this down, in my opinion, the risk of Stage Center sitting empty is too great. If not OG&E, what? And I urge this committee to approve the application so that OG&E can be, their headquarters can be built next to the Rex Elementary. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Bob. Is there anyone else that has a comment that would like to speak to this?
Good morning. I'm Leslie Batchelor. My office is at 301 North Harvey. I'm addressing the committee this morning to ask you to enforce your guidelines and regulations, and more significantly, to make the decision that's in the long-term best interests of the development of Oklahoma City and its downtown. I think we need to make a hard-nosed economic decision today, and hard decisions are sometimes the right ones, even when another decision seems easier to make. I'd ask that we keep in mind 2 basic economic principles, and that is that we live in a global economy where our city is competing with cities all over the world, where talent and capital can go anywhere. Secondly, I'd ask us to focus on the fact that scarcity and certainty increase value in real estate, and therefore historic and architecturally significant buildings enhance property values and generate long-term economic returns. Because they're scarce, they're valuable, and we can't simply build more of them. So the best way to generate economic growth for Oklahoma City in the long run and to increase real estate values downtown is to preserve Stage Center. That's what the guidelines call for, and that's what should be done today. Everyone here is well aware of Oklahoma City's history of failing to save significant buildings. But what's commonly misunderstood is that most of the time, those buildings were commonly thought to be obsolete, and that in many instances, it was the owners themselves who sought to demolish them. While it's more comforting to believe that some bad guy public agency called Urban Renewal came in and snatched valuable architectural gems and demolished them, the greater weight of the common opinion at the time that buildings like the Criterion and the Baum Building were demolished is that there was no way to save them, and that it was harmful to our downtown to have them here. We had a vision of the future that did not include those buildings. Now I think most of us recognize that that was a mistake. We didn't take the long view then, but we've grown up as a city, and I think we can take the long view now. One of the ways in which we've grown up as a city is that we now have the Downtown Design Review Ordinance. We recognize that we need to steer development, good development like the one proposed today, to undeveloped sites and sites where the buildings truly should be demolished. We know we have lots of those sites downtown, within a 4-block radius of this site. And as a community, it's incumbent upon us to help developments like this one land where they should go. These things ought to happen in our city, but they ought to happen in the right place. Saving historic buildings is hard. When the Skirvin Hotel had been abandoned, walking through that building, one would have thought it could never be saved. And in many ways, that building was much, much more difficult to save than Stage Center, because the features that make it truly special were the architectural details, the plasterwork, the woodwork, the parquet floors that were destroyed by abandonment and over time. What makes Stage Center really valuable architecturally is the overall design. It's largely concrete and metal. The things that have been lost in Stage Center are the drywall in the basement, the mechanical and electrical, the things that would have to be upgraded anyway. This building is not a total loss. Let's recognize that it didn't even flood until recent years. It did just fine for years, and there are changes that can be made. We have an opportunity today to make the right decision, to really think long-term, to help OG&E's project go forward, to help Mr. Williams' project go forward, but to find the right site for it in downtown Oklahoma City. Stage Center is not the right site for it, and under the DDRC regulations, the decision must be to deny the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Yes, sir?
My name's Rob Elliott, Elliott Architects. Our address is 900 Northwest 6th Street in Oklahoma City. And Ms. Batchelor, I think, said a lot of the comments that I won't repeat. I'd like to leave with this comment. This really is a true test of preservation for our town. Stage Center is of no fault of the floods or the bodies. I think there's more bodies in Nichols Hills over the last 40 years than we'll find downtown. These are things that we can fix. Nothing will ever be like Stage Center. Nothing will ever be built like it again. And we have it, and we need to keep it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am? It's fine. Go ahead. I think we're wrapping up here, so please give us your comments.
I'm Jill Adler. I live at 21 Northeast 3rd Street, and I'm a public citizen. I have no interest in the Stage Center other than personal, and I hate to speak in public. So I'm speaking because I feel really passionate about this. I moved to Oklahoma City a long time ago when the downtown was a disaster. It's wonderful now. I love to take people downtown. I love to show them around. And every time I drive past the Stage Center, they say, wow, what is that? And in fact, some of them say, that's the coolest thing I've seen, and I've been in a lot of cities. And every time I turn the corner and I see the Stage Center, I go, wow. I mean, it lifts your heart. I know some people think it's ugly. To me, it's beautiful. And it's something different. It's something unique. When I see someone talking about possibilities, I think, look at the possibilities of this building. I mean, the plans that have been shown to you all are no more real than what we could do if we just got together as a community and tried to save the structure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adler.
If there's no more speakers, there are just a couple quick points that I'd like to address.
Catherine Montgomery, Preservation and Design Studio,
1300 North Chartel. Well, good morning. I have to remind myself to say that because I kind of get carried away and with my thoughts and forget to actually express my appreciation for the important work that you do. I've worked with some of you in another life, actually helping you to redevelop your buildings and reap the tax credit benefits from doing so. Stage Center has a completed National Register nomination. It's been vetted through the city process, the state process, and been sent to the keeper of the National Register in Washington, D.C. A decision has already been made on that nomination, that the building is eligible for the National Register at the national level of significance. It's not just important to Oklahoma City. It's not just important to the state of Oklahoma. This is a building that has been recognized at the national level of significance. In Oklahoma, we only have about 24 buildings that are National Historic Landmarks. Not to say that this is actually an NHL, but it's one step closer being recognized at the national level of significance. An individual property cannot be listed on the National Register without the owner's consent, and that's why it remains on the desk of the keeper in Washington, D.C. until, as Barrett explained, the call comes through. This is a downtown design review committee, and I think sometimes in the presentations, the whole aspect of design gets lost in the explanations and the decision-making. We're also a community. Some of us are on opposite sides of the table today on this issue, and tomorrow we'll shuffle around and we'll be teaming up on other projects. Indeed, many will not stand before you because they can't. They have jobs that prevent them from being where I'm at right now. There are perceived conflicts of interest because of the jobs they have, whether those are public jobs or private jobs. There are some people who are intimidated by the size of the players in the equation. So I stand here today for all of those people that couldn't come because they had a job they had to go to, or for all of those people who I don't have that conflict anymore as a private business owner. And I'm also a member of the Chamber of Commerce. Some of the points that were made earlier today, on one of the studies that was conducted, there were technical problems with the building being redeveloped, and it didn't have some amenities. Technical problems can very often be building systems. Remember the days when computers were coming forward. In fact, this building was designed in thinking about circuitry. When computers were coming on board and buildings were being demolished left and right because they didn't have the clear floor-to-ceiling distance required to accommodate the raised flooring. We don't even need that anymore because we have Wi-Fi. How many of those buildings could have been saved if only they'd have waited 10 or 20 years? Amenities can often be appliances and cabinets. It's amazing how many projects I work on where it's not about the building at all. It's about the stuff that we put in it, like sound systems and stage gear and light systems. The user's needs and program were considered in the schematic documents that you saw today. And I also agree with Barrett that we're not really considering those things. However, it's interesting to note that some of the programmatic spaces that have been talked about include things like a conference center, daycare. I've designed a couple of those in my lifetime. Green roofs. To me, those kinds of things can also be used here, can be redeveloped. Stage Center can be redeveloped for some of those things. It's already got stages for corporate meetings and presentations. On some faces, it sets back. Stage Center sets back. Children still play during the arts festival in and around this sculptural form. Buildings cost money to maintain. Not everything has been done to explore the redevelopment of Stage Center, even as a part of the current development that's being considered or proposed in the future. It's really exciting, some of the tenants that might be going into the new development, because those are tenants that all of us basically don't have a choice but to support with our dollars, because they provide our electrical utilities. If we're on the grid, we're supporting that. They're a great, in fact, OG&E is a great corporate community partner supporting many nonprofit organizations and community programs. I think this is a perfect opportunity. A Facebook that was launched a couple of years ago actually has a couple of design ideas there. Some of them are kind of far-reaching, but the whole point is, how can you save Stage Center, repurpose it, use it, and have a tower? I think you can have it all. I think that Stage Center is the dot on the exclamation point of Film Row. As you know, as business owners and community leaders, things usually don't work, or they never work, if we decide that they can't work. But if we decide that they can work, we have a much greater opportunity for success. So I would support the position of my colleagues and those people who can't stand before you today, that you deny the application for demolition and encourage the development to include the redevelopment of Stage Center, which can also realize the 20% state tax credits and 20% federal tax credits, offsetting the redevelopment of that building by 40%. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Would you like to summarize quickly?
Yeah, I will keep it brief. I think it's important to note the key differences in the Skirvin project and this project. The Skirvin is a publicly owned building. That is a project that took $20 million of public money to renovate. But even in addition to that, the key difference is the Skirvin could be repurposed for its original intended use. Here, this building cannot. And I go back to the Webb study when they say they are fundamentally not optimistic about the idea of renovating Stage Center as a multi-user arts center. So that is a key difference. And finally, my last point is on the issue of the guidelines. If you look at the definition of a guideline, it is as follows: a general rule or piece of advice, i.e. it's a suggestion. There are two mentions of demolition within the DDRC regulations, and both of them use the word should. And that's legally significant because the use of the word should rather than shall means it's not compelling. I cannot believe that the use of the word should within the DDRC guidelines would really imagine that a building that has fallen into disrepair should remain forever and ever and block the key redevelopment of this site. With that, we would ask for your approval, and we thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Now we want to take some time for the committee to ask any questions and make comments as you would like to. You're sitting next to me.
Well, clearly, we're on the horns of a dilemma here, and I think all of us sitting up here take this very seriously, and it's, no matter what decision's made, everyone's not going to be happy, that's clear. And I think, as Catherine knows, I am a preservationist, and I think Dick and I have demonstrated that, as others have. Clearly this is an iconic structure. I don't think there's any doubt of that. And I agree that it's recognized not only here, but around the world. The problem I see is that, if you listen to Peter and others, and I think we've all had conversations about this structure over the years, it's just not very functional. And unlike the Skirvin and some of these other projects that have been renovated to repurpose, I think it will be extremely difficult to repurpose this facility. And for years, there have been various champions that have carried the flag, of trying to preserve this structure. And they've all fallen by the wayside. And I would say at this point in time, if any of you people out there, anybody wants to take Rainey out of this deal and do something with this project, I mean, we're all ears. But so far, there have not been any angels or other people that are financially able or willing or whatever to do anything with this building. So that's a concern. And based on what I think the best that can happen is that you weld the doors shut and paint it, and it's a big work of art. And I know there's a lot of sentimental attachment to that. And I think it's very cool. But in the real world, I do think that life goes on, and we need to, as a city, look forward to, the long-term needs of our citizens, what's best. And clearly, Devon kind of set the mark here. Kempker, build it and they will come, and I think that's kind of what's happening around Devon, and I think that's what will continue to happen. I guess my concern is, we're all still have the hangover from the eye and pay, let's tear it down and see what happens plan. And I don't want to see that happen here. So I'm inclined to approve the demolition of this project pending a plan that's presented to stick a shovel in the ground and start construction of this deal. In other words, I don't want to see it sit there as a vacant lot for 2 or 3 years until something happens. So that's kind of where I am on the deal, and I'd be interested in hearing my other committeemen.
It's a toughie. Been here 17 years, drive by it, take friends by it. Wow, that's terrific. Let's go see something there. I go, can't. I toured it when I think Bedford had it listed, and I personally, as a developer, had no interest in it. Nothing could really be done with it. I think over the last few years, several people has had a chance for a rebirth. Has not occurred. With endowments, with subsidies, everything you can think of. City Council just put out a list of buildings that we need to take down all over the city. They're a danger, they're a blight. I'm a developer, and we redeveloped several buildings. We're delighted with it, but we brought them back to their natural purpose, i.e. Skirvin, Montgomery, Classen, Park Harvey. I can't see this. I walked through, believe me, I visited with several people. Can we do something with this? It's a tremendous location. So that's on the one side. Everyone loves to look at it, but no one can use it. On the other side is Oklahoma City needs to continue the redevelopment of downtown. The school needs students. Film row restaurants and galleries need people. I would reluctantly, very reluctantly, favor the demolition of the Stage Center because there's really nothing else that can be done with it at this point. The lipstick on the pig, these plans are pretty exciting. And the developer, the proponent of this development is extremely capable, has the right team to do it, and has the right tenant. You give me that lease and I'll turn it into magic as well. But we just can't continue to have a structure like that that's dangerous, that doesn't function in any way, shape, or form. Have you all toured it? You need to tour it. It's pretty bad. It's real bad. It's not just systems and FF&E. The structure itself doesn't work. So I'm kind of with Chuck on it, and I think we need to grant the application to demolish it and support them the best way we can, which is what we do on the design of a new complex. Thank you.
Well, I'm the new kid on the committee, so I have not toured it, and I haven't taken as seriously all the discussions about this building that I've heard over the years. But I do have questions, and one is, there was an RFP. I know that. I know that there were 2 responses and nobody had any money. How long of a time were people given to respond to that RFP? That's one question. Do the people that want to save this building have an idea that they're floating around, they're not telling anyone, of what we can do with this building? And if you have an idea, how long will it take that we would leave this building like it is before something happens?
As to your question on the RFP, Ms. Anthony is here and can address that.
I'm Nancy Anthony, President of the Oklahoma City Community Foundation at 1000 North Broadway. The Community Foundation received title to the entire property of the building. We had title to the land, but the entire property in July 1 of 2011. We began the process at that time and began to talk about this process of the RFP. So it was very widely known that we were going to do it. In terms of when was it actually finished, we worked with the American Institutes of Architects as well as another group in town to actually, and the bulk of the material was actually prepared by the AIA and the Urban Land Institute. So they were the people that were responsible for doing it and for circulating it. So probably there was I'm going to guess at least a 3-month period formally when the RFP was available, but in actuality, the availability of the property for that was probably known since at least July of that period of time, as well as maybe even the period of the year before, when it was pretty well known that the Arts Council was going to give the property back to the city. So technically 3 months, but probably in actuality more like 7 or 8. And it was a pretty broad RFP. I mean, it was available, it was almost anything could be provided if it had to consider the building. Obviously, that's what we were trying to do, is can you repurpose the building? Secondly, it needed to be consistent with what was going on downtown. And thirdly, it needed to be financially viable, because we decided you couldn't kick the can down the road one more time. We needed to deal with the property one way or the other. So, thank you. Unless there are any other questions.
And that RFP was put out when was the RFP put out? 2012?
No, it was 2011 through February the 29th of 2012. 2012. And actually, it was basically left open after that.
Right. Could have been, someone could have come forward.
Right. In other words, we basically were still, the property wasn't listed until the following.
Correct. Right.
Probably about 6 months later. Right. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Well, I'm actually hoping that Catherine's going to come up and answer phase 2 of my question, which is how much longer, and do you have any ideas?
I just also wanted to add something to the RFP process. I was the president of the local chapter of the AIA at the time of that issuance, and I was one of the authors on that report. We included the results of that report, and including photographs of the building that we took a tour of at that time on a website. And a lot of the conditional representations of the building, in my mind, are inconsistent with my own personal findings, especially built on my career as a historic preservation architect. And secondly, we felt that the period of time in writing the RFP was actually very small, because it didn't really give larger operations an opportunity to seriously consider that they could actually have an opportunity to have the building, nor did they have the opportunity to consider what kinds of financial resources they might have available to actually make a response. the two responses that came in, one was very exciting and I thought very well thought out. The other one was very interesting, but not as, didn't have as much energy in the production of it. So, neither one of them had met the financial conditions that the foundation wanted to have. And I believe that that's simply a matter of time and advertisement. It wasn't really left up to the volunteer force that had produced the RFP to actually advertise the RFP. So I think that there could have been a much more vigorous effort employed to actually make it known that this was out for receipt of proposals.
I have another question, and Nancy, you could address this if you would. Was there consideration given to extending the RFP for a longer period of time?
Well, we wanted to come to some finality at some point in time. So yes, at that point in time, with the two proposals that were given, we actually offered both of those groups a right of first refusal for a period of up till the end of September if they chose to come back and have an opportunity if there was anything else that came along. So because we were not a government entity, the RFP deadlines, the process was really a guideline, so to speak. There wasn't a law that we were breaking by extending it or not extending it. So it was a time frame that the foundation set because we felt like we needed to make a decision and continue to keep going. But was it extended? It could have been if anyone had come forward. And in all honesty, when we worked with the American Institute of Architects and the Urban Land Institute, we said, it is not necessarily in our purview to know how to do this, so we left the advertisement and the promotion of it up to them. So whatever promotion had came from them. Thank you.
Okay, so to me, this still seems like an opportunity. I haven't been to the Stage Center since it closed or since the floods occurred, but I had been there beforehand. And I definitely enjoyed the plays that were put on there at Carpenter Square. But the way I see this as a big historical building, and so much so that it is in places like New York, the model of it, to me, this is a big deal. And it's hard for me to reconcile the historical side of this with, I understand, the economical aspect of this. And it is going to be a hard choice for us, but I believe that as far as preservation, we should stick to what we know as far as these guidelines. We have to have a point to stand on, and I think that's where we need to be.
Connie, do you have another question?
Well, again, because I haven't been here that long, I don't know if I saw you nodding also. I haven't seen this building since the flood. I haven't seen the damage, and I definitely wouldn't be able to vote to demolish it or to allow demolition of it without looking at it. If that's where we're going, I would want to look at it first.
All right. Does any other person on the committee feel that way? That you would want to view the building? We have certainly done that in the past. I know Dick's been in it recently. I have not been in it recently. I have been certainly all through the building in the past and have studied all the documents. So, okay.
I appreciate that you want to tour it. You can kind of partially tour it, just looking at some of those pictures. But I think at this time, and our responsibility is to come up with a decision, not continue it with a tour. We did that before. Sometimes we have, sometimes we haven't. I would entertain a motion to approve the application at this time.
I have some further questions.
Oh, okay. I don't mind at all. I move to approve the demolition of the Stage Center.
Well, I would second that on one condition, that that we conditionally approve the application to demolish the Stage Center subject to approval of his future plans for the development. I mean, what I don't want to have happen is we go in there with a bulldozer tomorrow and nothing happens for 3 years or 2 years or whatever. But pending that, I would vote for the demolition of the building.
My opinion is that you should not condition the demolition on approval of something else later. I think the demolition, you need to look at the merits, and because I don't think we can make somebody, construct something. I think they've committed to that in their materials, and I think you just have to, can take their word for that, but I don't think we should
Well, let me ask the applicant, what are your thoughts on that?
I would agree with Ms. Randall, and I think that Mr. Ainsworth and the rest of the committee can take comfort in we're not just seeking the CA for the demo and telling you this is what we hope and think. We've gone a step further. Tab 6 in your binder are things that we are committed to. We have agreed to do it, committed to do it, not only here in the public forum, but we've done it through our filings with the city. So I think the committee can have great comfort that what you're fearing will not happen. You're going to see applications come forward, and they're going to be consistent with the commitments that this applicant has made.
David, it's purchased, right? It's owned by the developer, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he paid 4 point something?
I'm not sure the exact price, but yes, it is purchased.
I don't think he wants to just sit on it.
I would agree with that.
He's already laid out for him, plus all the soft costs. I don't think they're going to be sitting on it. But I agree, you can't condition one with the other.
Well, my question is, when are you going to tear it down?
And how much?
Once the appeal process is up, frankly, we've already talked to Midwest Wrecking and another one, but we'll move as quickly as you allow us to. I understand your concern, certainly legitimate. I think you understand my concern. I think one of the reasons we put this package together, and frankly, why I took this project on, I was not involved until it had run its course, and clearly this building was where it was, and somebody needed to do this. Obviously, I was fortunate to work with OG&E, and our thought was the combination. Obviously, I've been here my entire life. I'm going to be here the rest of my life, and obviously OG&E is a leading corporate citizen. So we hope that combination will assure you that it will get done as promised. Otherwise, I keep running into all of you too many places, so I don't want to leave.
And the point is, we are going to move just as fast as feasibly possible on then coming forward with, the DDRC will have a shot at looking at the design of the building. But until we get this first step, we can't move forward with this opportunity.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
For the applicant. If we did deny this application to demolish the building, and that were upheld, would you consider still developing this site with the proposed office building? And is there a way that you could do that and keep Stage Center as a building intact on that site?
Absolutely not, because if you think about the site, it sits right in the middle of the block. I mean, you can't elevate a building 10 stories up and start it. If nothing else, no elevators, no nothing. It's not possible, in my opinion.
John Johansson himself said that the proof of a building is its use and its occupants. We just have not been able, I think efforts certainly have been made to be able to find viable occupants for the building. They have not come forward. It's just terribly problematic. I have another question, though, to ask you, and it relates to the plan that you presented. It's certainly absolutely a quality-driven site plan. I like everything that I see there. It is not an actual plan. We are under guidelines to uphold our ordinance and preserve historic buildings and the exteriors of historic buildings. I think it's very difficult for us, that is our responsibility, and we take it so seriously, particularly with this building and the amount of interest there is in it and its significance. I think it's very difficult for us to approve demolition of a building based upon a site plan which is not actually determinative of what will happen on that site. There are still some question marks. I don't have any reservations about the quality of your intentions or the fact that you want to absolutely do a great project. But there remains the fact that we would be voting on demolition today pending seeing something in the future that we don't have an exact plan. We don't know what's going to happen, whether it's going to be hotel, retail. We don't have specifics on design for that or materials or landscaping or any of the other things that it's our responsibility to consider. So that's my comment. I'd like to know if my fellow committee members have any comments about that as well. What is your comfort level with that?
I mean, clearly, I think Tannenbaum, and I think you ought to tear it down. And I guess the question is, do we trust Rainey and OG&E and the rest of this crew to make good and do a quality project? And I'm inclined to think that they will do that. So I would second Dick's motion.
All right. We have a motion to approve demolition of Stage Center. We have a second. And so now I'm going to call for a vote, and I would like a voice vote from the committee.
Aye. Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
We have a tie. And so I assume that I need to vote. Okay. I am going to vote aye. It is a 3-2 vote.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now take a 3-minute break, and we will resume very quickly afterward to hear our next cases.
probably both. I'm ready to reconvene the meeting. Are all the applicants here? I guess you can't answer if you aren't here. Okay. The next item is 24 West Park Place. Is the applicant present? Can you come forth? Tell us your name. And this is a revision.
Yes.
You want to go over that?
Yes, please. Good morning and thank you. My name is Dwayne Mass with Mass Architects. At 24 West Park Place, we had brought a project to you roughly 8 to 10 months ago for a repurposing of a warehouse. As a matter of fact, it's directly adjacent to our office. During the, God, this is a word I hate to use, but during the demolition, in the front, it was, we had wanted to pull out, there's the picture of the original building. We stripped the front of the building. You'll see a flagstone in the building. We were going to pull out and bring brick into it. We completely restored the front. And during the demolition, it was found that for some unusual reason, all of the lintels and the bulk of the steel in the front facade of the building is nested into the masonry. It's kind of an old school thing, but this building, I guess when they got to that point, they changed how they were building things. They nested the steel into the front. We could not pull that out. We were going to pull that out and put a brick weave in. So we had to keep that in place because to be able to pull that out and reset all that steel, I don't know if you guys are familiar with what's called needle beaming, and we literally would have to support the top of the building while we pulled that out. The financial burden to our client was one he could not absorb. The building, we're very, very proud of it. We're getting rave reviews about it. Transmission House, a creative studio, is in the back. Sweet Law is taking the front. So what we did is we kept the metal screen and everything pretty much exactly like you had seen it in the original rendering, the metal on the building. But what we did, since we had to retain the flagstone, not the flagstone, the ashlar cut stone, the owner, we showed him several things we'd done to several buildings. We'd all sort of fallen in love with something we'd done, a redwood rain screen. Redwood is a wonderful material. We use just little bits of it to intermix with the metal to give a great appearance. Now the redwood is, are you familiar with a rain screen? A rain screen is something that allows the water through and then comes back. So what we did is we did a bit of furring out and put the redwood on the front. Redwood is an unbelievably durable material. Mr. Tannenbaum, you might remember our Navy, for years, it was the decks of our aircraft carriers, our battleships. People who think redwood is a softwood have not worked with it much. It's a wonderful material. It's got a very wonderful presence to it, great warmth, very durable, and I would ask that we be allowed to revise our front to put on this smaller amount of redwood, but we were going to do the brick weave. Again, it was something that we just could not accommodate the original design due to the construction of the building, and it's something our client just fell in love with, something he'd seen on several of the buildings we'd done. So we would ask that we have a rendering that we had done that is, I believe, in the packet.
Right.
In the application. Yes, ma'am.
Why don't we, the staff has recommended approval. Why don't we let the staff visit about this real quickly?
Okay. Our issue is not that it's not a beautiful appearance that you've created. It's just that it is not one of the recommended materials within our guidelines. And I have seen weathered redwood that does not complete the look that you have now, as it's fresh and new. And we have concerns that because of our climate and our weather conditions, this would not retain its appearance that would be equivalent to some of the materials that are recommended on within the guidelines. So we recommended approval with the conditions that an alternate material be chosen for that cladding in place of the redwood.
Do you have a maintenance program for your redwood?
Yes. It has been sealed It has been sealed with a marine-grade varnish. It's got a couple of coats on it. Our experience is with that level of finish. Now, there's no end grain shown. Everything is mitered. This is a detail we've used quite a bit in the past. The owner's very committed to the building, and with his investment in that building, he's up to about $1.2 million right now in renovation costs in that structure. He's very committed to the building. He's placed, just in renovation costs, over $100 per square foot in the building. He's allowed us to get very unique, very creative inside. For that amount of commitment, I can't see him letting less, so maybe 120 square foot of redwood go for what his total investment's now $2.2 million in this building.
Okay. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for the staff or for the applicant? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this? Any comments?
I move to approve the application.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve it, a second from Tannenbaum. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You are approved. Thank you for being here.
Thank you all very much.
And good luck with your project. The next item is 1125 North Broadway Avenue. The applicant is standing at the podium and signing his name. Will you want to tell us who you are?
My name is Sam Gresham. I'm the architect on the project. It's a Mercedes-Benz Jaguar dealership. These are corporate identity packages required by the franchise. Our images actually are essentially provided to us by Jaguar and Volvo, both of which I said Mercedes-Benz, didn't I? Volvo and Jaguar dealerships. The application, we've taken, both dealerships are housed in a single building, and that facade has been applied to the front of that existing building, which is fairly generic in its current condition. The other part of the application is an addition to the back of the building. There was a recent application, which I think most of you might have been involved in, for a vacation of part of the street of Broadway Place, and that vacation allowed the building to be, the Volvo building, to be expanded so that we have a 20-foot addition to the west face of the building for service bays. Any questions that I can answer?
Well, I have a question from staff. Well, and actually, Scott, you want to give your full commentary on this?
It does comply with the ordinance, and so we recommend approval based on the comments in Section C of the staff report.
Well, your recommendation is a little, I don't feel like we can have him revise, we can approve it and have him revise the elevation. That would be a continuous.
No, we're not asking
item.
for that on this one.
Okay.
No, we recommend approval of the application as provided.
Oh.
Move to approve.
Okay, sorry, I read the wrong application.
Move to approve, Madam Chair.
We have a motion to, sorry, I'm all tied up. Motion to approve by Ainsworth and second by Tannenbaum. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Okay, the next item is 801 Northwest 10th Street, and I get to recuse myself for this one.
I'm Scott Dedman with ADG Architects, 116 East Sheridan, Oklahoma City. And we are here today. We were here in November to give an informational on this project. This is the project at 10th and Chartel, just directly northwest of St. Anthony Hospital. And with me today is David Leesenby with Millhouse Developers, and I'll let David speak for just a second about the vision of this site.
Thank you, Scott. My name is David Lesenby with Millhouse Development at 530 East Ohio Street in Indianapolis. We are as we've talked a little bit about last month when we were here, we're a multifamily mixed-use developer that has identified Oklahoma City as one of our next markets, and the first project for that, as we presented last month in kind of an overview, is located at 10th and Chartel on the northwest side of St. Anthony's Hospital. I want to tell you a little bit about what we're intending to do with the project, and then some of the gaps that it fills, and then I'll turn it over to Scott to talk in more detail about the design. We've created a project, about $42 million project of about 327 units, and it includes bed studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedrooms. It also has multiple amenity spaces, outdoor spaces, and places for recreation for the residents to come together, including courtyards, fitness studio, lounge areas, and multiple other recreational opportunities within the building, including a pool and an entertainment deck and things like that. We also, what we're finding in many of our projects, that we're adding additional things that residents are requesting, like bicycle parking, so we have a lot of that, concierge services, facilities for pets and pet washing and things like that. So we've designed all these spaces into the project, and Scott can walk you through the details of that in a little bit. In addition, we have a 445-space parking garage located on the northwest portion of the site that Scott will show you. That has about 1.3 parking ratio for the site, and we talked a little bit about that last month, about how parking needs are changing in buildings like this, and we'd be happy to talk a little bit about that if you need to later. Some of the gaps that this fills, we see this as complementing a lot of other things going on in Oklahoma City, and so we really see it as a complement and filling some of the gaps. One of them, the first one, is the apartment market. We have created our unit mix, as I mentioned, of studios, 1s, 2s, and 3s to complement some of the other buildings that are under construction and being planned in the city. So, for example, we have units as small as 370 square feet that allow us to charge a rent that is lower than what you would find in Oklahoma City today. So we have 36 studios from 370 square feet up to about 550, and we can get our rent down into the $950 range and under for that, and some of the units will be as low as $800. So, and then in our 1-bedrooms, we've designed units that are slightly smaller than the average in the 600 to 650 square feet, so trying to keep that rent around $1,000 to $1,100. If you've looked for an apartment recently in Oklahoma City, it's very, very difficult to get a new apartment under $1,000, even at $1,000 as a 1-bedroom. And so we're attempting to, and we've done this in other markets as well, design a product that is just as good, highly amenitized, highly designed, lots of high-end features and details in them, but provide them in a smaller space, which is what the market's demanding today. The other side of that is we've also created another product that doesn't exist, a larger 3-bedroom, 3-bath that approaches 1,500 square feet. So that also isn't in the market today. And so that's very attractive to residents at the hospital that might want to be in a roommate situation. It's a 3-bedroom, 3-bath, and also young families who we believe are the next market in Midtown. The other gap that it fills is really an urban design solution. It creates an anchor for the west end of Midtown, where it's located on 10th Street, and it provides a real complement to a lot of the retail development that's going on. And then through its design, we have created a situation where we have patios along the street, where the building has a great interaction with the sidewalk and the streetscape, and those that have pets will want to live on the first floor units along the sidewalks, and they can walk out on their patios and that sort of thing. And then we've also designed it to make it very easy to bike and walk to work. So it's one of the guiding principles of the design is create large facilities for bike storage, places where you can work on your bike within the building and provide tools for that, and then design the circulation and the access to the building in a way that allows you to come down and you're going to choose to walk to work or to restaurants rather than use your car. You're really not going to need it in this location. And then the final gap, finally, that it fills is the bigger vision for Oklahoma City. There's a couple of recent plans in the last few years that reference this neighborhood and this site in particular. The 2011 housing study called for more housing along 10th Street and stressed the importance and the need for that to balance the land use. And then the Midtown plan as well talked a lot about mixed use and the opportunities in this neighborhood, coupled with a streetcar, which we think is plays right into that, and how this site complements a lot of the other efforts going on in the city. So I think together with Midtown and its growth and what's going on downtown, those, as you know, those will continue to grow together as more development comes in the next few years. And really, that's what it's going to take for Oklahoma City to continue to compete nationally for young talent and the companies that come with them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Scott to tell you more about the design.
Okay, well, I'm going to talk just a second about the facts. So David did mention that we have 327 apartments. I think one of the unique things is we've got 3.3 acres, so our density is about 99 units per acre. So it's a very dense project. So we're also providing a lot of parking on that site as well. So we have the site plan up. Of course, 10th Street is down at the bottom of the sheet. We've got Chartel at the right, Francis at the north, and 11th in the back. I think we had some misinformation in our narrative that was mentioning 9th Street as opposed to 11th. Again, what we've tried to do is follow the design guidelines as much as we possibly can. So the building is located within 10 feet of all property lines on Francis, 11th, and Chartel. We are proposing that new diagonal parking be placed along 10th Street. To do that and to be within the 10 feet, our building would be right up on the edge of the parking. So we're asking that we can push the building further back to allow for an adequate sidewalk to be able to maintain an active sidewalk along 10th Street with the diagonal parking. We have been in discussions with traffic and do have some consensus on what we need to do to provide the diagonal parking. No problem on the parallel parking along the side. So that's adding 54 spaces of public parking along the street that we will be doing. We are aware that there is another development going on in this area, just to the northwest of our project. We've been in discussions with that developer. One thing that we have done once we found out about that was actually relocate the garage from some of our early designs. That made the most economical sense was to have the garage just exposed on these two sides on 11th and Francis so that we could get as much positive ventilation through the garage as we could. Once we found out that we had neighbors, that there was a development going on, we actually shifted the garage to the east, moved units from facing onto this small courtyard to facing on Francis. It really felt like that improved the project and really sort of enhances that neighborhood. So that was one change that we made very early on, seeing the new development that's going on in the area. Let's see. One thing about the site is we do have a significant amount of slope. We slope about 17 feet from east to west on that slope, so we are trying to take advantage of that. When you look at the perimeter of the structure, 85% of the perimeter faces the street either with commercial space, restaurant space, or residential space. 15% of the site is faced with the facade of the garage. So 85% is spaces that truly activate the area. Also, in locating the garage facade, of course, 10th Street is probably our primary street, Chartel probably being the secondary street. Francis creates somewhat of a neighborhood street. 11th Street, we're facing a large surface parking lot and a medical office building. So we felt like this was the best location for the garage. On the ground level, because of the slope, the ground level, what we're calling the ground level, It's somewhere between 4 and 6 feet above Francis. It actually sits up just a little bit above Francis. And then the courtyard space itself would be the same in this area. All of the units that face along Francis will have stoops and will be able to access Francis directly from their apartment units. As we go up a floor, these two courtyards rise. The finished floor of this level is about 1 to 2 feet above Chartel. So we have a split-level courtyard situation with steps that extend through this opening from one courtyard to the other. Now, we're not applying for our landscaping this time. We're asking for a continuance on that, so we will come back with the landscaping plans of the courtyards and the streetscapes. One other thing about this floor, of all floors, the way the garage is built, it aligns with the unit floors in the southeast corner. And so it can easily access the units at this point. We're a half level off at this point, and that would be accessed through a stair tower. On this ground level site, we do have the sidewalk in this area. This would be the retail space. The tenants has not yet been determined, but it would be a very nice space for a restaurant or some type of a shop. This space is the clubhouse and leasing office. Both of these areas are a slightly lower elevation than the rest of this floor so that they can be accessed directly from the sidewalk. As you know, again, we have the slope on the site, so these have to be depressed somewhat to be able to access the sidewalk directly. Third and fourth floor are identical. Again, you can see the courtyards being opening up with a lot of units opening onto the courtyards, balconies that open directly onto the street, and then access to the parking garage in this area. This will take a second. The fourth floor, we have 4 levels in this area. This is the 4th level on the east half of the project as it goes up the site. And again, it drops off, and again, you're looking out onto the roof of the adjoining wing. And then finally, we do have a 5th level. So we have 1 level of podium where we have the restaurant and the clubhouse, and then 4 levels of residential above that in this small 5th level area. So this is the look at the southeast corner. This is kind of the signature corner off the roundabout and facing back towards St. Anthony Hospital. I've brought a lot of materials. I don't know if you guys want to see them or if we just want to talk about them, but I'm happy to pass them around if you want me to. Basically, the palette of materials would be cement fiberboard siding. What you see in sort of the gray is a cement fiberboard. Architectural metal panels that would create sort of the detail in this area. Again, this would be architectural metal. And then we'd be using accent colors in some selected places. It's very limited, but just some areas to add some color and some pop to the design. At street level, we have just aluminum storefront and clear glazing that would open into the corner commercial space and also into the lobby. So we'll look at some of these in detail. Again, this is a detailed elevation of that the 10th and Chartel corner. Our typical corners are consisting of sort of a projected detail element that can get the mouse to work. That are done in an architectural metal, which would be similar to this. We use a brick base at all of the first floor levels, so we have a very substantial material at the first floor levels, and in some places, primarily stair towers, it extends up the full 4 stories. We're using a cement fiberboard panel system, and it's a cement fiberboard with aluminum reglets or reveals that would make up those panels, and then again the siding. The predominant material that you would see of the cement fiberboard will be the panels. It sort of creates the backdrop with the siding elements as kind of the pops, kind of the details. And then we're proposing a red brick that's consistent with the neighborhood, consistent with the hospital as well. This is an image of the two different types of cement fiberboard and the reveal system. We're also using a vinyl window, and I do have a sample of the vinyl window with us. And we'll talk about this a little bit more, and I have a sample of this with me as well today. But the screening on the parking garage, we are screening the north side of the parking garage and using a perforated architectural metal panel. This is the same metal panel that we brought before you guys to get approved for the expansion of the City Center East garage. So that's the material that will be going up on that project. Just a small detail elevation of the stoops. So the stoops will be a brick stoop with a steel handrail with a mesh infill panel that will create those stoops. Primarily on the Francis side, there are some on the 11th side. On Chartel, actually, it's a walkout patio. So we have the elevations. This is the 10th Street elevation that you see, and you can see the slope of the land and the way it steps down the site. So in the corner, again, we have primarily the siding with the architectural metal trim and details, a coated concrete column that supports all of that, recessed balconies in these areas, and then kind of a unique projected balcony, again, that was the sort of the little yellow accent colors that you saw in the previous rendering. We come down, we actually have some storefront that will extend the full 4 stories in this space, or full 5 stories actually, that creates sort of a separation from this corner element and then the remainder of the complex on that elevation. So this would be the cement fiberboard panel system. Again, everything you see in white would be cement fiberboard. The brick base really starts in this area, so the lower apartments would have a brick facing on them. Again, a pop in this corner of the siding material, cement fiberboard, brick extending up, and again, the architectural metal corner elements. This is the Francis elevation below that. The corner elements, again, are the architectural metal panel and a brick, both ends, sort of bookending the cement fiberboard panels and the cement fiberboard siding, and then the brick base and the brick stoops along that area. So now this is the Chartel elevation. So again, you're seeing the 10th and Chartel corner in this area, the little bit of accent colors that happen at those balconies, the architectural metal panels that come up and create this detail at the sort of the primary corner. Again, the cement fiberboard panels and cement fiberboard siding that runs along the length of that elevation with a brick base. And again, these are units that have walkout patios, so they're essentially at approximately the same level as Chartel or Chartel's sidewalk. And then we come to the north side. We are wrapping the corner at 11th and Chartel with units, so the units extend back about 125 feet until they reach the garage, and so the garage is kind of tucked into that elevation. We have a stair tower on either end. We have the perforated metal panels that create the screens for the stair towers, a brick base that would run the length of the garage, and an architectural metal canopy that sort of mimics the canopy at the main entry, same material. One thing about the garage, as we moved it in, we have to maintain the ventilation in the garage so that we don't have to do a power ventilated garage, because that becomes just cost prohibitive to do. So we have to be able to open that up. What we've done is we've been able to open it up on the 11th Street side with the perforated panels and the slight gaps that we have between that, and then we've created a breezeway between the apartments and the garage on the east side so that we can have that side open as well. We're still very close on our calculations on the open air, so that ventilation is very important to be able to maintain that. And then this is the end of the sort of the Francis elevation where that unit turns the corner with the architectural metal panel and the brick. This is just a quick section through the clubhouse. One thing I wanted to point out, at the clubhouse entry and even the retail space, the typical floor-to-floor on the apartments is about 10'8". We've recessed the floors at the corner at the commercial space to where we have about a 14-foot floor-to-floor. In the clubhouse, we're actually ending up with about a 16-foot floor-to-floor, where we have 15 feet of glass that opens into the lobby of the complex. We do have the canopy that sort of runs the length of that and provides shade into that area. So I get it to turn one more time. There we go. So this is a detailed view of that 10th and Chartel entry. So we have the storefront glass that opens into this commercial space, the architectural metal canopy, the cement fiberboard siding, and again, you can see a little bit of the accent color on the balconies. So that's basically the project quickly, and I'd be happy to pass the materials around if you'd like to take a look at those. Like to see that?
Does anyone have any questions? Scotty, would you like to speak to this?
Yes. This is a large project with a lot of housing units and an awful lot of different materials cladding the exterior, and it does provide the opportunity to interact with the pedestrian at street level. It does have units that open out onto the street, and those that don't at least have windows on the eyes on the street. However, that doesn't apply to Northwest 11th Street. I can only engage the pedestrian so far, and then he's on his own. I've got a parking garage that produces a dead street that does not reflect any of the materials of the rest of the building, that doesn't even tie into the rest of the building in any way. It offers some screening, but it does not offer anything that would engage the pedestrian or enliven the street. And because they're using a variety of materials, not all of which are included in our list of materials encouraged for the committee approval, we ask that you, if you feel like the fiber cement panel and the boards are guaranteed and specified to be equivalent in appearance and durability to the materials included in the ordinance, then approve case items 1 and 2 on the basis that the project complies with the regulations, with the conditions that the applicant revises the parking garage to better enliven the street, that there is a demolition submitted and approved for the existing structures on the site, some of which we may have issues with, and the applicant receives a variance to the board, from the Board of Adjustment to the setback regulations because the property line, the building is set back from the property line along Northwest 10th Street. We ask that you also provide a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment for that setback variance. And we ask that you continue items 3, 4, and 5 to the February 20 meeting in order for the applicant to have the opportunity to provide us with the finalized plans and a revised elevation of the parking garage.
Okay.
I would like to address the parking garage. Again, I'd like to state that 85% of our perimeter activates the street, creates active spaces on the street. I think as we develop housing in Oklahoma City and we want to be able to provide parking, I don't think we're to the point in Oklahoma City that we're going to be able to develop housing without parking. Dick is one of the few that's been successful at that. But we do have to have parking, and we have to make it economical for the developer to do. And that means that we need to naturally ventilate those garages. To be able to conceal the garage completely is a very difficult thing to do. From a marketing standpoint, it's much more pleasant for the residents to be looking into a courtyard that has other apartments looking into that same courtyard as opposed to looking to the side of a parking garage. So I think we have done sort of the best compromise that we can in placing that parking garage, abutting a surface parking lot, abutting a commercial property. There are other multiple parking garages in this area that the Cottage District looks on to the St. Anthony parking garages. Directly behind the Pasteur building, there's a large parking garage, and there's a huge amount of surface parking that everybody looks on every day. The Millhouse tenants are going to be looking onto a large surface parking garage. 11th Street is not one of the primary streets in that area. It dead ends at Francis. So it's not a major through street where there's a lot of pedestrian traffic.
I know the staff makes a comment about the cladding material, the 62% that's the cementitious siding. Do you have a brand that you're going to use, or can you provide a guarantee?
There are several brands. We did provide a guarantee of Hardie and of the Hardie product, and I think that's similar to the other products, but it's a 30-year warranty.
Okay, so you will have something that will have a
Yes.
30-year guarantee.
Yes.
For that.
And this is a similar product that I believe that you all approved for the Belmasada project recently as well.
Right. I'm aware of that. Okay. Any other questions? Does anyone in the audience want to speak about this project? No. Okay. We may be ready for would someone like to make a motion? Connie, want to try a motion? We've got several elements here.
There's a lot of stuff there. Okay, so I move that we approve case items 1 and 2. And I'll have to say the parking garage doesn't bother me that much, so I'm going to say with the condition that demolition of existing structures of the site are approved and the applicant receives a variance from the Board of Adjustment to the setback regulations. And I make a motion that...
Let's make a separate...
Oops. Oh, that's second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to approve case items 1 and 2 with the condition that the applicant revises parking garage. Is that correct? No, Connie?
No, I didn't line up.
You didn't put that in. You're okay with that. But the demolition of the existing structures are approved, and that you get a variance from the Board of Adjustment to the setbacks. Right. So we have 2 conditions to the approval of 1 and 2. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. Now we need another motion for the Board of Adjustment. Recommendation to the Board of Adjustment. Would anyone care to address that?
I will move that we recommend approval to the Board of Adjustment to the variance of the front yard setback regulation.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. And then we have a recommendation, staff recommendation of number 3 to continue 3, 4, and 5 to our next meeting in order for you to provide complete finalized plans, and you can do that by then, I assume? Okay, do I have a motion on that?
Yeah, I move to continue case items 3, 4, and 5 to the February 20th, 2014 meeting.
Okay, second? We have an Akinwande Tenenbaum motion and second. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I think Betsy is returning now. Yes, great.
Okay. Have a good time. We're losing a couple of people. Our next item is a presentation by Robbie Kinzel, Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs. Maybe Dick and Ike will get this information later. Okay. Robbie?
Thank you.
Sorry for having to sit through
It was
2.5 hours of
very interesting. Thank you, Robbie Kinzel. I'm the Liaison for Arts and Cultural Affairs in the Oklahoma City Planning Department, 420 West Main. And we have many creative people at the city that work in a variety of levels, whether it's landscape architecture or planning or photography, video, graphic design. But we've never, until the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs was established in July 2012, had an artist in residence. And this is a position that we have part-time, and it supports carrying out the percent for our ordinance. And the liaison position works very closely with the Arts Commission and is integral to conceptualizing certain kinds of planning projects very early in the stages. So since January of last year, we have had an artist in residence, Anna Thomas, and I brought Anna with me today so she could both see what this commission does, this committee does, and also to introduce you to her. She's a graduate last May from the University of Oklahoma with an undergraduate degree in studio architecture. And positions like this and work like this is something that is of interest to several universities in the area. So I did want you to know that that is happening. And then the cover slide for this presentation, too, I wanted to orient you to this presentation. It would be as if you were traveling downtown from the airport to downtown, what you would see on the new Oklahoma City Boulevard. So for those of you who may not be, have been very involved in the realignment of I-40 and the resulting Core-to-Shore plan, this is the impact area. You can see the old I-40 up above that is now dismantled, and then the path for the new I-40 is 5 miles to the south. And this will explain, this is the new I-40 that you drive on today, and then the resulting new boulevard location. This is what the new boulevard could look like in 30 years. This would be if you were at the site where this project will be, which is aligning with the railroad tracks. And if you were looking west along the new boulevard, you can see a convention center hotel there to the north. Beyond it, a convention center. To the south, a park. That's why you lose buildings. And here you are looking from the new Central Park to the north. And you can see that might be the Convention Center Hotel and the Convention Center, or some semblance of that. But that could be what it would look like in 30 years, approximately. Here again is the site, a very close in. You can see what says Ford Center is now Chesapeake. And you can also see the location, the blue box in the top, that is the space for the Convention Center site, MAPS 3 Convention Center site, and the new Central Park. So I wanted to zero in specifically on the area that you'll see in your packet. And also I wanted to be very specific about when this assignment came to the Office of Arts and Cultural Affairs, what we were asked to do. We were asked to respond to ODOT and their consultants' request for color and texture for the form liners for the railroad underpass. Okay. Normally, when we do this as a planning department working in concert with Public Works, we're given a catalog and we're given a source online and we pick a color and texture. But because we had an artist in residence on staff, we could take that a little farther. And what we're asking you to do today is not do any kind of an action, but we're asking for comment, because this is going to be part of the public comment that we're visiting with a variety of different public responsible groups and asking them for this comment so that the city has some confidence that it's moving forward in the right direction when it informs ODOT. Okay? And so the Arts Commission has already seen this same proposal, and in a couple of weeks, Bricktown will also receive this proposal. Okay. Now, first, Anna started working on this last August, and I asked her to walk the area quite a few times and take a lot of photographs. It was very important for her to understand the existing conditions because she had not been involved in a lot of downtown development in the past, and she really needed to have kind of a good portfolio of snapshots and really understand, even from a development sense, what had been going on. So west of the railroad track, you can see it's pretty much a blank canvas, both in color, texture. It's an area that is ripe for new development. And so she certainly did not want the design to lead any new development, but more leave it open for what that new development will bring. Then to the east side is Bricktown, of course, very well developed, also under a different kind of a design review system. And here there's a definite color palette, very rich, saturated. Unfortunately, to even bring this to you today, I had to ask for the computer model early. And the reason, and why I say that's unfortunate, is there are some measurements in the computer model that you'll be concerned about, and that's not why I'm here today. And I do want to reassure you, though, that that will be brought to you at a later date so that you can comment, because there's some width of sidewalks that could have alarmed you. There are some heights of retaining walls. But what we were asked to do is really give a sense of the kind of color palette and texture that would be recommended for this area as it was being designed. So I had to ask, though, for this computer model early, because we knew that there was a change in elevation of many feet. And we didn't know how that would impact the specific area under the railroad bridge. We didn't know if it would be a huge dip or if that would level out and seem, very flat. And it was very flat, so we're very glad we requested it. But this is what the computer model looked like, and you can see there are several retaining walls. And I cannot tell you if they're, I'm assuming some of them are retaining soil, but the computer model is still incomplete. So I did not want you to get caught up in that, but with a reassurance that this will be brought to you later for those specifics.
So, Robbie, one of the things that I would hope that you would do is look at some examples from other cities about how this space that could be very daunting, it creates these blank walls, how this could be enlivened and what you would need to do or what the city would need to do that.
And we have done that, actually, and we've been working with Downtown Oklahoma City. They have a young infrastructure group, and we've been collecting a lot of images, a lot from Texas, as a matter of fact, because they have so many large highway types of infrastructure, underpasses, things like that. And a lot of it is done with light. And so I'll explain as we go through this how that connects with this project. In fact, right now, with the Arts District parking garage, the public art selected for that, the team of artists that will be working on it, they have one of the examples we love the most, where gears are used from a tire and light, and it's reflective. So we wanted to create a situation with this, though, because this is not eligible for Percent for Art ordinance funds, the city's contribution to this project. The Percent for Art ordinance funds are, the way the ordinance is written, is only for buildings and parks and major renovations. So it is not for roadway projects or bridges. So I want to make that very clear. So we wanted to create, though, something very interesting and not just pick a single color and a texture out of a book, okay? So one of the unknown factors, too, that we were alerted to in the model is, even though the city has asked for there not to be a central pier, that it could be one. And we were pointed to, this is on I-40. It would look like this if it does land there. But that, again, this central piece to the railroad bridge. We don't know if it's going to be there or not, but I wanted to point that out because we thought that would be one of your questions. This is one of the unknowns, and it will be brought back to you. In all of the core-to-shore planning, we've asked for a clear span across the railroad bridge, and so we don't know if that is possible right now. And I just
you're
wanted
talking about the support in the center of
Thank you, yes, that support, okay? So here's the proposed form liner design. And a lot of this has been developed on the existing conditions, the color palette, examples from other cities, including examples from retaining walls. Anna did quite a bit of research on different types of retaining walls. What you'll see in each one of these are standard form liner colors and textures in the catalog that we knew we could use. And in the center, the separation is a steel beam that can be added later. In fact, it's more of a T that can be added in place later. And then we were proposing that these could at some point be lit, either with rope lighting, but that the facility itself needs to be very well lit. Okay.
What about graffiti?
Graffiti. This would be, because it's out of the standard, this will be the city's responsibility, and because it's out of the standard colors and not a mixed formula, it would be the city's responsibility to go back and restain with the actual color in the catalog. These are just standard off-the-shelf types of colors. So each time there would be graffiti, the city would go back and paint it as that happens. And that's why we were asked to use standards.
So is this stained concrete or is this painted concrete?
This is all stains. These are standard catalog stains.
Now, I know under those Bricktown, we have to repaint those things like what, every 5 years or so?
These are what you would see on I-40, all of those stains that you see.
I was kidding.
I'm just saying it would be great to do something that was easy to maintain. Once you paint something, you got to keep painting. That's my point.
Yeah, these are what's all along I-40 that you also can see graffiti on, and then you see it disappear because it's fairly easy to cover up with the exact same color. It's not tag resistant, no. No, but it's very easy to replace the colors because it's standard, and it just has to be maintained. And we would hope that this would be such a well-used part of the city and very inviting that normally when you see kind of an interesting design in a place and not just a blank wall for graffiti, often it is not tagged as much or at all. So that's what we would hope. Whereas if it was just the color and the simple texture out of the book, it might look more like a blank canvas.
So do you have anything to do with the approach to this?
I do not.
Oh,
no.
okay. Okay, that's who we need to really work with, because that's what could make this a very negative space.
Well, and the Planning Department, Urban Redevelopment Division, I think the Alliance for Economic Development and Public Works are all working together to work with ODOT and their consultants, many consultants on this. But we assure that they need to know what we will recommend for the textures and the colors to be able to proceed. And they wanted some form of public comment, to be confident that they could move forward with that and it wouldn't distract them from some of the other facility work they need to do. So this was the original. Just so you know, even internally to the Planning Department, there was a process. Anna worked with several different planners. And certainly we had designs before the computer rendering was used, and that changed a lot of things. So she had to go back several times. But this was original. And somehow the story of development started coming through on the story of how her design was made. And that's why it changed to this, with this long history of Bricktown development and kind of the new history to the west side. It started, making changes that were a little bit different. Now, here's some of the things that I did not want to distract you, but I thought you would probably ask, and that's why it's in your packet, and some of the measurements, and they may be something that you can just keep a hold of so that later when you see some new facility designs, you can compare them and see how it's changed. One of the things we're very alerted to was that the retaining wall on E.K. Gaylord goes from 2 feet to 7 feet, and we didn't really like that, but you can also see that it looks like it's retaining land. Things like a 5-foot sidewalk, which is not what it should be, and we know that. And just so that you can see some of the spans across, because like I said, there may be a support later, and we don't know yet. That was one of the unknowns.
Do you know if this is going to be tall enough to accept streetcars in the future?
Yes, that has been the constant conversation all the way through it. Yes.
I know you're not doing the...
It's hard to separate the two. Originally, our transportation planner, Randy Enns, was going to be here with me to kind of separate the conversations so he could offer reassurance, and he had a conflict today, so sorry about that. So do you have any comments about the aesthetic, the stain or the texture treatment that we should carry along and do any redesign or...
Well, I just got back from Phoenix, so I don't think we're doing enough.
Yes.
However, I'm glad we're doing something, and I think it looks really nice. I do wonder if, now that you have an artist on board, if we might be looking at master planning of the whole area as how it all fits together, or do we get that option? Does ODOT just give you a catalog and so on?
I think that ODOT will be designing the facility, the boulevard, and the underpass, and their consultants. And I think that the budget is so limited that maybe further master planning will be the responsibility of the city.
So do you have any photographs from Phoenix that you'd like to share?
No, I didn't take any pictures.
Okay,
but it was
tell me where to look, because I'm going tomorrow.
Well, Scottsdale.
We'll talk about, okay.
Any road, any highway, anywhere.
Yeah, they have
It's all gorgeous.
a rich public art program, one of the best in the nation, and theirs does apply to facilities that ours does not, the types of facilities like
I'll
roadways
take
and
lots
highway.
of pictures for you, Rob.
Yes, thank you.
It's great if it could be a continual, if there could be a continual master plan.
Do you have a public art master plan going right now? Or?
We do, yes. We received an NEA, National Endowment for the Arts grant, last year through the Cultural Development Corporation of Central Oklahoma. And the Cultural Development Corporation added $15,000 to that. And right now we're master planning with a consultant out of San Diego named Gail Goldman. She'll be here again in February for 3 days. And we expect some sense of a draft master plan by August that will take through a process. It'll really be a process-driven master plan, though, because we have a new ordinance, and all we have are drafts of policies and procedures. We don't have any adopted ones. And so we expect, though, that she'll make some recommendations for physical master plans in several areas, that possibly, the river, downtown, airport. Those have already come up in the conversations.
Anything else?
I don't, unless you do.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for living through this, and thank you to the committee for living through this. Everything else on the agenda looks like you can read it and ask Scotty questions later. Our next meeting is February 20th, and I am going to suggest that we adjourn. Oh, Jeff, you want to speak? We don't have
Well, I'm sorry that you didn't ask for public comments on this presentation. I want to add something for the record.
Okay.
I was asked to come here and speak regarding this Boulevard underpass.
Okay.
And my name is Jeff Bezdek. The address is 1015 North Broadway. I was asked to come speak for Friends for a Better Boulevard.
Okay.
And our official statement is that we consider this to not be a sufficient public process for examining the mitigation of this particular project. And I understand that you're just looking at the art, but they're asking for public comments. And the renderings that have been shown to the public of this facility and the animation are not consistent with the computer models that now are emerging. And so, in short, we are asking for a proper public process in which ODOT and the people involved in this facility actually host a public meeting, contact the people who have attended previous public meetings, and have a discussion with the community about the design and the aesthetics of the facility. Just a few notes. This facility impacts access to Bricktown directly. As was noted, 30-foot sidewalk on the south side where there is no development and a 15-foot sidewalk on the north side where your major public access would occur to Bricktown, and the 5-foot sidewalk running along Ika Gaylord is concerned. And secondarily to that, the Santa Fe Station facility, of which we have currently received federal funds, the design of that facility is also impacted by the width of this bridge and whether or not it's sufficient to carry railway traffic in the future, commuter rail, beyond the current design. So, in short, I'd like it noted that we are officially protesting and requesting a meeting specifically about this facility. We do not consider this mitigation of the old I-40. We consider this an entirely brand-new facility and a very expensive one. Thank you very much.
Thank you for all the time that you put in. Just to let you know, this is not the official presentation. This is just an informational presentation from today. So
I
you have
agree,
lots of time
yeah.
to work with Robbie and her staff.
Well, the concern is that Public Works and ODOT will consider this part of the public process in revealing, having public input. And so that is the public input, that we actually need to have a meeting specifically about this facility.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are adjourned.